Let's talk about the New York Giants. Joe Schoen is not the right general manager for this team long term, and Brian Daboll is not the right head coach with this organization long term either. It will be smart for ownership to come out after this season and to fire the coaching staff and to clear out the front office and start new with your potential franchise quarterback and Jackson Dart. I have loved everything that Jackson Dart has done so far this season. And before we get into today's roster, I want to go back to that first year with Brian Daboll as a head coach because it was a successful season. They made the NFL playoffs and they won that playoff game against the Minnesota Vikings. But we have to add in context here. That roster then is drastically different from the roster now, and things are going to change in the NFL from year to year. But Joe Schoen has been downright terrible with his draft picks and his free agency pickups. That roster that won that playoff game over the Minnesota Vikings, and granted, the Vikings defense was horrendous, but you can't help the teams that you play. You go out there and you can control what you can control. That roster had Daniel Jones. Now, I'm not going to come on here and act like Daniel Jones was a franchise quarterback with the Giants. The quarterback that you see now with the Indianapolis Colts and Daniel Jones was not the same Daniel Jones with the Giants, but you had DJ at the quarterback position. You had Saquon, running back, Andrew Thomas, Dexter Lawrence, Leonard Williams, Julian Love, Xavier McKinney, just to name a few. That was not Joe Schoen's roster. Those were the draft picks with Dave Gettleman. And this is not a video to romanticize over the time period with Dave Gettleman. He made a lot of terrible decisions with the Giants. But it's crazy that he was a better general manager than Joe Schoen. So that roster was constructed by Dave Gettleman. The draft picks since then have been downright terrible with Joe Schoen. In 2022, this was his first draft class. Kayvon Thibodeau has been a solid player. Where you selected him in the NFL draft, you would be expecting more. You want him to be in the same conversations with elite edge rushers like TJ Watt, Max Crosby, and Myles Garrett, but he's not a bust by any stretch of the imagination. He's been a solid player. He'll have some good moments. He'll have some bad moments. He's hot and cold. Evan Neal, complete bust. He can't guard anyone. Wan'Dale Robinson, he was overdrafted. You could have picked up a better wide receiver in this position. Wan'Dale Robinson is not a scrub, but he was not worth the draft selection where you drafted him. Josh Azudu, he's not a starting offensive lineman in the NFL, more so of a backup offensive lineman at the guard/tackle position. Cordell Flott, very good defensive player. I will give him a lot of credit for that pickup. Daniel Bellinger, solid tight end. He's not this game-changing tight end, but he can be serviceable in certain matchups. Dane Belton, more so of a rotational player on the back end of this defense. Micah McFadden, for where you selected him in the NFL draft, that was a solid pick. DJ Davidson is a bench player. Your last two draft picks are no longer with the team, which is expected. When you talk about 6th round and 7th round draft picks, most of those guys, they don't pan out. Some do, some don't. The 2023 draft class, Deonte Banks, you traded up to select him. He's been a terrible player outside of his rookie season. And Brian Daboll benched him a year ago. More on that situation in a couple minutes here with Brian Daboll being a hypocrite with his players and with his coaching staff. But Deonte Banks, he didn't work out. JMS is wildly inconsistent at the center position. You can say that he's a decent player. I'll give him that. Jalen Hyatt, he can't catch. He's not a good football player in this league. He was seen as his vertical threat coming out of Tennessee, hasn't lived up to the hype. Eric Gray is a terrible running back. He's a special teams player now with the New York Giants. Trey Hawkins, out of the NFL. Jordan Riley, out of the NFL. Owens, out of the NFL. In 2024, Malik Neighbors, great wide receiver. But that was a layup. We all knew that coming out of LSU that Malik Neighbors was going to be a generational player at his position. Tyler Nubin, terrible safety. Andrew Phillips has been up and down. But Andrew Phillips has not been good this season on a consistent basis. Theo Johnson, he can't catch as a tight end. Tyron Tracy, very good running back number 2. I view him as a running back that could play off of someone like Cam Scatterbo before he injured his leg against the Philadelphia Eagles, and I wish nothing but the best for Cam. He's become one of my favorite players this season, and hopefully he can bounce back next year. Darius Musa, terrible pickup. Not a good player at all. So now look at it from this situation here. The 2023 draft class may be the worst draft class in Giants history. And Joe Schoen made every single last pick. And the mismanagement with this roster year in and year out. You traded Leonard Williams to the Seattle Seahawks for nothing. That was a stupid trade. And he's become a star with the Seattle Seahawks. He's one of the best defensive players in the league. And he was a very good defensive player with the New York Giants. Julian Love, he's no longer here. He's with the Seattle Seahawks. Xavier McKinney, he's no longer here. He's with the Green Bay Packers. Had a career year last year. Had one of the best seasons for a safety in NFL history with the Green Bay Packers last season. The entire Saquon situation, which I have covered many a times on this channel. Joe Schoen act like a complete baby on the HBO Max series Hard Knocks. He said that it took time off his life making that decision with Saquon. And Saquon wanted to stay with the New York Giants. He's no longer here. He won a Super Bowl last season in this division with the Philadelphia Eagles. Daniel Jones, who I've come on this channel, I've made jokes about, I've called him Danny Pennies in the past. He was a bad player with the New York Giants his last season. He goes over to the Indianapolis Colts. He has resurrected his career this season. It's a bad look on your general manager. And you look at the Giants right now. Malik Neighbors went down with an ACL injury against the Los Angeles Chargers, and that does suck. But injuries are part of the game. You have little to no depth behind Malik Neighbors. You gave Darius Slayton a contract extension. He can't catch the football consistently. But this has been a negative in his career dating back to his rookie and sophomore seasons in the NFL, and yet you still gave him a contract extension. Jalen Hyatt, he's not consistent on the field. He's not a good wide receiver. Little Jordan Humphrey has become a consistent wide receiver with the New York Giants all of a sudden, which is crazy to think about. That is insane that is a player that Jackson Dart has to depend on. Your offensive line still isn't good. And I blame all of this on Joe Schoen. You can't put this on ownership. This is not a Jerry Jones type of situation to where the owner is the general manager. He puts you in this spot to go out there and to help his team. But instead, you've made it worse over the last 4 years. Move off of Joe Schoen as soon as possible. They should have fired him after last season. It is gut-wrenching. When you go back in that Hard Knock series, you can see the owner walk in and Joe Schoen looks at the TV, and the same with Brian Daboll and Mara. And they all see that Saquon signs with the Philadelphia Eagles. And the owner, he just walks out, he just shakes his head. The episode before, he said if he went elsewhere, especially in the division, he couldn't live with that decision. But instead, it happened anyway. And Joe Schoen is the ultimate analytic guy. He doesn't believe in going out there and paying certain players a certain amount. He was looking at it from this standpoint. Well, we can't pay Saquon this much money because we have Daniel Jones making a lot of money. Even though Saquon was your most consistent offensive player and he was your best player for many years, even though it is the running back position. But it's the way that Joe Schoen went about it. And this is the same man that traded a third-round pick to the Las Vegas Raiders to bring in Darren Waller, who was beat up and banged up at that point in time in his career. That trade didn't pan out. The only good move that Joe Schoen has made was trading a second and a fifth-round pick for Brian Burns, and I will give him a lot of credit for that. He has been a sack monster this season. He has been a star. And yet your defense still isn't good because of your coaching staff. Which brings me over to Brian Daboll. When Brian Daboll first came over to the New York Giants, he had this Bill Belichick mentality. I don't care how much money you're getting paid. We need you to produce. So within those first couple of games, Kenny Golladay, he couldn't catch a cold with the New York Giants. He was a very good wide receiver with the Lions. The Giants paid him a lot of money. They needed wide receiving help. Wide receiver was an issue then, which is still an issue now outside of Malik Neighbors. But he benched him. And it helped bring in new life into the New York Giants. He's the same coach that went out there. He benched Deonte Banks last season because the effort wasn't there. But he doesn't have the same energy for his coaches. Remember early on in this video when I said that he's a hypocrite? He will come out and he'll call out players. He has a certain standard for his players on the field, but not for his coaching staff. Him and Wink Martindale did not see eye to eye. They had a lot of disagreements behind the scenes. And one day, it was a bad argument. And Wink Martindale put his hands up. He said, I'm done. He goes over to the college level with Michigan. He's a very good defensive coordinator. In general, I'm a huge fan of Wink Martindale. He's not a perfect defensive coordinator, but he's better than Shane Bowen. So he leaves. He brings in Shane Bowen. Shane Bowen has cost his team football games this season against the Denver Broncos and against the Dallas Cowboys. That Broncos game was just terrible. All of the points that the Broncos scored in that matchup came in the fourth quarter because of that prevent defense, and we're going to play off coverage. And the same against the Dallas Cowboys when Russell Wilson had a career day. You lost that game 40-37, and this is a team that is made off their defense. Don't get it mistaken. Just because they spent a first-round pick on Jackson Dart, they also spent their highest first-round pick on Abdul Carter. You have Brian Burns, who's making a lot of money. Like I mentioned, you trade a second and fifth round pick for him. On the season, Burns has 10 sacks, tied for the most in the NFL, and 1 forced fumble. You paid Bobby Okereke a lot of money to come over from the Indianapolis Colts. You spent a first round pick on Kayvon Thibodeau. You paid Paulson Debo a lot of money. You spent a high draft pick on Tyler Nubin. You're paying Javon Holland a lot of money when you just could have gave Xavier McKinney that contract. You've allocated a lot of resources in this defense, and yet it is still not good. And majority of it is on your coaching with Shane Bowen because he has no idea what the hell he is doing. The New York Giants are 2-6 on the season. They could easily be 4-2 with better defensive coaching. And this was a problem last year. They were terrible against the run. They were terrible against the pass. And that is all on Shane Bowen. But instead of pivoting and moving on from Shane Bowen last season, you kept him around. And we have seen coaches in the past move on from coordinators mid-season, especially after one bad season. Bill Belichick has done this. And the reason why I bring up Bill Belichick is because not Shane Bowen, because of Brian Daboll. He was on that coaching staff with Bill Belichick. He won 5 Super Bowls with that organization as an assistant coach. And he has seen what Bill Belichick has done to coordinators in the past. He'll move on from them. But instead, he keeps Shane Bowen around. Hopefully, after this season, ownership will finally wake up and he will move on from Joe Schoen and he will move on from Brian Daboll and this entire coaching staff. I don't trust Joe Schoen to help out Jackson Dart. Look at how bad the supporting cast is right now. And majority of these draft picks are all by Joe Schoen. Tracy Jr., not a bad player, but Wan'Dale Robinson is not a true number 2 wide receiver. Darius Slayton is more so of a number 3 wide receiver. Theo Johnson, he can't catch. Daniel Bellinger has dealt with injuries in his career. Andrew Thomas, he didn't draft him. Dave Gettleman did. John Runyon is a solid rotational left guard, and he's a starter with this team. On most teams in the NFL, he's not a starter. JMS at the center position, up and down player. Jermaine at the right tackle position. The only reason why he's here right now at this position is because Evan Neal did not pan out. And this is the same general manager that was gifted not 1, but 2 first-round picks to work with, and he basically squandered the Evan Neal pick. We can talk about the Jackson Dart situation, Abdul Carter, and Cam Scatterbo, but look at how many years we are into this tenure. This may be a fun season because of Jackson Dart, but he's basically doing everything on his own on the offensive end, and he still needs proper coaching. He'll have some mistakes. He's a rookie, but I don't trust his coaching staff, and I don't trust Joe Schoen to go out there and maximize his talent. You need a true general manager that can actually build around his skill set and a true coach that is willing to go out there and to switch things around with this defense and the same on the offensive end. But looking at the games that the Giants have lost this season, they could easily be a team with a winning record, despite having a terrible general manager that does not know how to do his job and a head coach that is stubborn as hell. And maybe I missed the mark on this one. Let me know in the comment section below. Do you agree that it's time for the Giants to move on from Joe Schoen and the same with Brian Daboll? And I don't say do it right now. Do not do this during the season. It will hurt the situation with Jackson Dart. He's had Brian Daboll in his ear the entire offseason. But after this season, move on. As soon as the season ends, move on from this administration. Easily one of the worst administrations in Giants history. And ownership deserves a lot of blame because this has been a problem for a very long time. And they finally need to get this offensive line right. They haven't had a emphasis on this roster. But let me know in the comment section below, how do you feel about the New York Giants? If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. If you like the video, hit the like button. Most importantly, I want each and every last one of you guys stay safe, stay positive. Thanks for the video, guys. God bless. Peace.